All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Roll Credits. I'm joined by my co partner, Lucas.
What's up?
And today we are going to be reviewing the hit 2019 film Joker. But before we get into that, a really good topic of discussion was brought up to where what we would want to see a movie made as similar to this, but for a different Batman villain. Lucas, go right ahead.
Yeah, I feel like for this conversation, I'm going to avoid Joker for obvious reasons. I'm going to avoid the Penguin for obvious reasons. And I feel like the villain who has the most potential, at least for me, would be Scarecrow. I would love a good Scarecrow horror movie. I'm not sure exactly how we would
Oh, I didn't
frame.
even think about the horror genre.
Yeah, you already know. I don't know how we would frame it. I feel like it would be interesting if the protagonist was, say, Scarecrow's brother or Scarecrow's girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever. We can come up with lore. I don't know much about Scarecrow personally, but when I think about other villains, also Harley Quinn doesn't count. She's had her movie. When I think about other villains like Mr. Freeze, Clayface, the Mad Hatter, I can't really see myself building a narrative for them. But
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a good point.
for Scarecrow, you can create any sort of story about how fear empowers people. I feel like we live in a very fear-mongering based culture right now, especially with the internet. And if there was a way to really tap into that creatively, it doesn't necessarily have to be media manipulation, but if we have someone exploit people's fears for power, for some sort of goal, I feel like Scarecrow could do so in such a way that would be compelling. And it wouldn't really be much of a Scarecrow origin story. No. This isn't Morbius. There's no morbing time with Scarecrow.
Marv.
This is a kind
Not
of
that fucking piece of shit movie.
this would be a movie, a stylistic movie, much like Joker is, that has elements of IP in it. I feel like IP is so huge in Hollywood right now, but Todd Phillips was really the only person who kind of utilized it on a mainstream basis to elevate a story because Joker isn't really a film about the Joker. It has the Joker, it has Gotham City, it has Bruce Wayne and Alfred, but it's its own it's a completely different story. It just has, I would call it Batman flavoring. So if we could get like a Scarecrow movie with some Batman flavoring on it, listen, Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, you know where I am. Send me the check. I'll be ready. I'll get you your spec script right
Good
away.
check. I'll be ready. I would actually love to see how they could kind of do that with like the whole ground, because Joker I felt like was kind of easy to do with the whole
Yeah.
grounded setting, but then like when you kind of get into more of like the niche kind of characters in Batman's Rogues Gallery, it's more difficult to make it grounded. Now, granted, my pick for this would be Bane. I would love to
Oh,
see a I
I
would
forgot about
love
him.
to see a Bane solo film, or even like
Ooh.
a trilogy of films, kind of going through the perspective of Bane, his upbringing,
Oh, that's so
whether we're
good.
going with his Welsh descendancy or we're going for his more Latino descendancy, because there are different versions of Bane. There's different versions of every single comic book character out there.
Of
It's
course there are. That's Tom Hardy, obviously.
and I would actually kind of like to see how they would take on the aspect of, if they were going like the Joker style, like really grounded, like really like, realistic in like a modern day setting, of how they would kind of make him to be this beefed up super soldier that just runs on fucking I can't think of the juice that he runs on right now. Oh my god, this is pissing me off that I can't think of
We'll call it
this.
steroids for the sake of
Yeah,
convenience.
yeah. We'll call it steroids. But personally, like, cause would they make him like, just like a bodybuilder, like a meathead, or like would they kind of go like the Captain America route and give him like a soldier serum?
I think it would definitely be interested. If you could cast someone as Bane, who would you cast?
If I could cast someone as Bane, oh man, that's tough. That's tough. Ooh, I'm going Batista.
Okay. Okay, that'd be sick. I feel
Yo,
like,
let's rebuttal that quick. Hold on, who would you cast as Scarecrow?
oh man, I feel like depending on the age you want to take Scarecrow, if he's on the older side, I'd be interested to see what Matthew Lillard could do with the role. But
Okay.
if we take a younger perspective, maybe Stephen Young. I think that'd be cool to see him kind of dip his toes into more of a psychotic character.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. Absolutely. All
Awesome.
right, well, I guess let's hop into this next point. 2019 movie Joker. What do we got, Lucas?
Joker surprised me. I saw this movie back when it came out, and I was expecting it to not be as good as it was. I was wrong. There was a lot of detail in this movie that I was very appreciative of. I feel like the story makes sense. There is a clear arc with this character. We understand. We feel they said the way the screenplay is formatted, it's very easy for the audience to root for him. Literally, the first scene is Arthur Fleck getting beaten by a couple of teenagers. We see his sort of psychotic neurological issue with compulsive laughing. We see the negative effects of that. But as the movie goes on, the more you start to realize that he's an unreliable narrator, the more you kind of start rooting against him. And I think it's very much a classic fallen hero sort of story. I don't think that's the right term, but it's like a Mr. Chips to Scarface type arc, like Vince Gilligan with Walter White.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. The way that this movie kind of took him for the route that at least I saw it, especially from the beginning, he's like kind of starting to, get things going. His job's going all right for the point being.
Yeah.
He gets this kind of, I guess, flirt slash girlfriend in a sense of the lady right down the doorway from him, and then for that to transition into her never being there and him just seeing all of this as like something that in his mind happened but in reality it never did, that threw me for an absolute whirl, considering I also haven't seen this movie since it released, and rewatching this was an absolute gold mine for me.
It was a lot. I completely forgot about the gun fake out. One of his coworkers gives him a gun, but it becomes apparent as the film goes on that that was made up in Arthur's head. He never got the gun from the coworker.
Yeah, which that was also that was something I didn't even realize, because he questions the coworker that was in the just the red nose and the white face.
Yeah.
He acts like this scene never happened, and obviously it didn't, because he's just imagining all this shit. Also, like the letter that he read from his mom to Thomas Wayne about Arthur being Thomas Wayne's like kind of bastard son, kind of like Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. For that to also all be going on in his head, and then him to realize that he's adopted from getting the papers from Arkham Asylum.
It's a
I just
very
think, as far as like this movie goes, with really encapsulating itself as Gotham City, it did an excellent job at.
yeah, it feels very real. It feels lived in. Arkham's not some goofy, tropey, cliche looking mental asylum. It looks very real. I feel like one of the coolest parts about this movie is the unreliability of Arthur's mother, Penny. She's clearly delusional. We see that in his interactions with Thomas Wayne, in Arthur's interactions with the Arkham receptionist. I feel like the letter was real, but it was written by Penny because she's just delusional.
Yeah, exactly. And she's been feeding this lie to herself ever since she was in Arkham, because eventually we get to like a flashback point of her as a like middle-aged, maybe younger woman,
Yeah.
and we see that she is saying the same stuff that is on that note, and the person that's across the table from her is telling her that these are all lies, you're making this shit up in your head, yada yada yada.
One of the things that I loved about this movie beyond the story, because the story is just well written, and it is a great movie about mental illness, poverty, isolation, manipulation. One of the things that I was really impressed by was the production design. This movie is filthy. The subway is covered with
Yeah,
graffiti. The trash, did you notice the trash?
yeah, I did notice the trash. I loved it. I love that it actually kind of encapsulated what, because I'm a pretty big Batman fan. You know this, Lucas. I've
Yeah.
seen tons of different versions of Batman media, whether that's the live action films, animated series, video games. This did a pretty damn well job for what my standard is for Gotham.
I think, did you notice though the trash like reference?
The trash like reference? No,
Yes.
I didn't notice the trash reference.
When
What are we?
when Arthur's in the hospital with Penny, Murray's show comes on, and Murray makes a joke about there being a trash strike. And I thought that was just brilliant because we see the trash all over the city and there's payoff for
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, that is a good point. I didn't even think about that. Look at you looking at little niche details that I'm not even noticing.
This movie is so detail oriented. Arthur's journal, I think, is one of the most terrifying components. There's this subtext of sexuality with Arthur. We see, for instance, when the phone rings, when he's being picked up to, when he's being vetted to go onto the talk show, we can see him in the background touching himself, his hands down his pants. When he opens
I
and
didn't
flips,
even realize that. I thought that was just him waking up.
when he flips through his journal, there's very clearly like strange pornographic images crossed out. I don't even want to know what he's looking at. It just makes me uncomfortable thinking about it. But there are so many components of Arthur's strangeness and mental illness that we never see. We never see. We see how the world sees him in some instances. My theory is that the scenes where he's more aggressive, like when he laughs off the cops, I feel like those are more real than the scenes where he's more, sympathetic.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. And another point that I wanted to bring up, which I thought, is a good question for also another movie. I don't think this thing's on here, so we can at least be thankful we don't have to review the sequel of this movie because I hope it's not steaming garbage. But for the way that this movie ended, I know I'm kind of jumping ship here a little bit. For the way this movie ended, it could have set it up so much better. Like there could have been such a better universe set up because you had all the plot points ready to go. Also, don't know if you noticed this is the end of the movie. There was a taxi driver reference.
Oh, really? Where is that?
So at the very end of the film, when Joker is in the back of the police car getting taken down to
Yeah.
uh, Gotham City Police Department, and then you see the ambulance crash into him. You see a taxi flip over, and then what is the first dude that he sees? He sees the dude get out of the ambulance. What jacket is that dude wearing? The
Oh,
exact same jacket from Taxi Driver.
love it. Love Taxi Driver and its influence. I feel like the
Yep.
ending, in
Go
some
ahead.
ways, I wasn't a big fan of it in hindsight in terms of the mental scene. I really wish we could have just ended with him being surrounded by the chaos. I know that wouldn't have established as much closure with what happened with the character, but man, that final shot of him lifting up his lips, surrounded by this movement he inadvertently started because he is a child starving for attention. I love that shot. I wish part of me is glad that we have the mental illness, like the mental hospital scene for closure, but part of me, oh man, what an ending that could have been.
Also, the music choice for this movie was absolutely impeccable.
Amazing.
I loved every scene that had music going on in the background because it just helped sell the point even more that this dude is just one crazy sick son of a bitch that has no idea what's going on, but he's just in chaos and he's just taking the best of it.
And I'm curious if the laughter is supposed to be a substitution for crying because Penny is constantly telling him to be happy. She's very emotionally manipulative, screaming at him to suppress his emotions. I'm very curious if we kind of look at the laughing scenes as instances where he's crying. Like when the mother tells him to stop playing with her child on the subway, or when he goes up for the first time to do stand up. He's laughing uncontrollably, but these are very clearly scenes where it could possibly be a way to express his tears in ways that we never see because we never do see him cry.
That is a good point. Yeah, even when he's like at some of his breaking points, we just never see him fold. Another thing I wanted to bring up, which I thought was really impressive, was Joaquin Phoenix's
Yes.
ability to absolutely malnourish himself.
Yes.
Because literally within the first scene, I believe, of seeing him, all you see is his spine protruding from his
Ugh.
skin. So you know this dude hasn't eaten a meal in a hot minute.
Joaquin Phoenix is the best part of this film. There are a lot of films we've watched on this list where I could make the argument that it's still great without its talent. We don't need Lawrence of Arabia could have had someone else star in it. Same thing with Come and See. Same thing with 2001: A Space Odyssey. This movie is dependent on the talent of Joaquin Phoenix. He was exceptional. He was believable. He was emotionally compelling and twisted, and I feel like a lot of this film's weight is carried on him.
Absolutely. And personally, something that I'm happy of, because, we still get to see him as an actor. Rest in peace to an absolute legend of Heath Ledger.
Rest in peace.
Uh, something that I was kind of happy to see was that this movie didn't exactly, kind of switch his mind how it did with Ledger's, because Ledger went down a deep and dark fucking hole when he was reading up for that role, which is also why it's considered one of the greatest comic book performances ever, due to the fact that we don't get to see him again ever in any kind of media.
And Ledger also had a drug dependency, which I think Phoenix is sober. Plus, Phoenix lost his older brother to a drug overdose in the 90s, so it makes sense how.
That's a great
Yeah,
point. I never thought about that.
yeah. I don't think the other actors are as good as Phoenix. I feel like all of them are passable, except for De Niro. I feel like De Niro is somewhere in between like the other actors and Phoenix. He was really good because he's Robert De Niro.
Absolutely, yeah. Anytime you see Robert De Niro in a movie, except for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or
Well,
not Once Upon a Time in America.
in his defense, he was good, but the script didn't really give him much to
Yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
beyond
That's a good
walking
point.
around and talking and observing and reflecting. Um, yeah, I mean, also it goes without saying the cinematography in this movie is beautiful. I don't really gloat or talk about that because I'm not a camera guy, but all the components just add up. Was there anything with this movie that you think was done wrong?
Is there anything that I think with this movie that was done wrong? Not with like I could go on and on about the sequel, Lucas.
Oh, we're not
I could
talking
go
about the
on. And,
sequel. I've never seen the
yeah, yeah,
sequel.
no.
I'm not counting the
The
sequel.
it's so bad. It's so bad. It's mediocrely bad. Like I might put it below Morbius. That's just telling you how bad it is. What do I think this movie did wrong? Huh, this is actually a good question. I can't think of a goddamn answer.
There is the thing that I dislike most about this movie is probably the three investors, the Wall Street characters who are in the subway, because they're just cookie cutter tropey characters. There's no, I mean, they're realistic because those personalities do exist, but it just felt a little too cliche. And once in a while, too, the dialogue could be overt. I feel like the whole "we're living in a society" speech at the end was at times teetering too on the nose. Obviously, Phoenix's acting made it as realistic as possible, but the message, not the, there's no message of his character because this film is a critique of what his character believes in. I feel like the loner incel sort of vibe that he gave in that speech, at times it could be a bit cliche.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? Now that I think about this, I know exactly what this movie did wrong. Now that I'm thinking about it, you know what this movie did wrong, Lucas?
What? What?
It was the entire entourage scene of him in the Arkham Asylum when he was talking to the dude that he got the file on for his mother. If you really think about it, now granted I'm kind of nitpicking here, but like he runs away with a document that is somewhat important to that asylum,
Yeah.
and not a single person after him running down 3 hallways and 3 sets of staircases, not one person's going after him.
Maybe they had limited like filming schedule. Maybe it was just an issue of just filming nearby so they can like fit it in, but I agree. He should have read it in a different location. Also, too, the only plot hole that I noticed is that, I mean, they didn't need to explain this, but how did if Penny was admitted for abusing Arthur, it makes sense why he doesn't remember, like he repressed his trauma. But how does she get him back? How did he come back in her life? They never hint at it, and I wish there was a bit more clarity with that
Yeah,
logic.
that's a good point, Lucas. Yeah, because like, why don't you send him in? Like, obviously, it's Gotham City, so I can understand
Yeah.
why the kind of neglect to send him into social services would be a thing, because the fact of how many orphanages get taken over by people in Gotham, whether it's the Riddler, a random gang, or another one of Batman's rogue gallery villains, and I can kind of see why, because who else does he have to go to? There's like we don't see any other family involved with Penny and Arthur
You
other
have a
than those
point.
two.
That makes sense. But yeah, aside from those issues that I had, I can't think of anything else this film did wrong. So I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5.
All right, all right. I respect that. I respect that. Personally, out of what I've gotten out of my entire collection of Batman media I've been through, this movie, as far as an origin story kind of point for a character that never really gets this kind of limelight of him just kind of being an insane person, which Arthur Fleck does actually exist in Batman villains, by the way, people.
Really?
In Yeah, he is one of the versions of the Joker that exists. That they kind of go on more the whole like grounded standpoint, where I'm sure Todd Phillips probably got some inspiration from for this film.
I did not know that.
Uh, where I am ranking this, I think I'm honestly gonna have to match it a 4.5.
There we go. Would you like to put it between Reservoir Dogs and Come and See? It'd be below Come and See, above Reservoir Dogs.
I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely cool with that.
Sounds good. All right. The movie oh my goodness. The movie we are going to be talking about next week is, sometimes I can't say it. It's going to be the 1999 movie American Beauty. I've been waiting to see this movie for ages now. I'm so excited to check it out.
All right. Gonna have to watch that next week then.
Yep. All right. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your dogs. Do whatever we want. We love our canine audience. Take care, guys.
Absolutely. Peace out.